Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here again to tackle the latest batch of updates from AWS.
And it was quite a batch this week, covering June 2nd through the 6th. A lot landed.
Yeah, definitely felt like a busy one. Shows that pace,
Yeah.
It just doesn't slow down.
Absolutely. So for all of you navigating this constant stream, our job today is basically to cut through that noise. We've sifted through, I think, dozens of announcements.
At least.
Yeah, to pull out the really important technical bits, the practical stuff that actually matters for your day-to-day work. We'll keep it technical, focused, straight to the point.
Exactly. Think of this as your essential briefing for the last 5 days. We've got AI, compute, storage, data, networking, security, the whole lot.
Right.
So let's dive in. First big theme seems to be around boosting developer productivity and really weaving AI deeper into the workflow.
Yeah, that definitely stood out. And a huge part of that is Amazon Q Developer, specifically what they're calling the agentic coding experience.
Agentic coding experience. Okay, that sounds more active than just Q&A. What does that actually mean for a developer, like hands-on?
It means Q is starting to do things for you, multi-step things, right inside your tools. Think reading files in your project, generating code diffs based on what you ask, even running command line tasks. It's trying to automate those fiddly bits that, break your concentration.
Okay, so taking actions. Where can we actually use these new powers?
Well, the agentic stuff we saw starting in VS Code and the CLI, that's now rolled out to JetBrains and the Visual Studio IDEs too.
Ah, good coverage.
Yeah, but maybe even more impactful for operations folks, this agentic behavior is also expanding inside the AWS Management Console chat and in Microsoft Teams and Slack.
Oh, interesting. So for troubleshooting.
Exactly. You can ask Q complex questions about why something's broken, like a Lambda function error, and Q can actually go and investigate. It can look at CloudWatch logs, check the configuration permissions, maybe recent changes.
Right.
And it tells you what it's doing while it does it right there in the chat. So you're not jumping between 10 different console screens.
Okay, that level of automation within the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds genuinely useful for debugging. Saves a ton of clicking.
It really does.
And I think I saw something about model choice in there as well.
You did. The Amazon Q Developer CLI now specifically lets you choose Anthropic's Claude Sonnet 4 model.
Ah, okay.
So you get some flexibility there. Maybe you find Sonnet 4 gives you better reasoning or coding results for certain tasks. It's about choice.
So the big picture for Q is less context switching, more automation right where you work.
That's the goal, yeah. Keeping you in the flow.
Okay, sticking with AML, but shifting to the heavy iron. Big news for SageMaker training, right?
Oh, yeah. Huge news. Amazon SageMaker training jobs now generally supports the new Amazon EC2 P6 B200 instances. These are packing the latest NVIDIA B200 Blackwell GPUs.
Blackwell. Okay, what are the specs like?
Pretty monstrous. We're talking 8 Blackwell GPUs per instance. A massive 1,440 gigabytes of high-bandwidth GPU memory that's like 60% more memory bandwidth than the P5N instances.
Wow.
And networking to match 3.2 terabits per second of EFF4. Serious hardware for serious training.
And the performance claim. Is it living up to the hype?
Well, AWS is claiming up to double the performance compared to P5 for training, so yeah, significant.
Where can you get these?
Right now, it looks like availability is mainly through SageMaker HyperPod flexible training plans in US West Oregon, or you might need to talk to your AWS account manager for on-demand reservations. It's cutting edge, so access is a bit controlled initially.
Makes sense. So AWS getting the absolute latest GPUs into researchers and developers' hands quickly.
That's the play.
Still on SageMaker, but more about the user experience. Updates to Studio.
Right. They've introduced a new upgrade path, basically, to help people move from the older SageMaker Studio to the next-gen SageMaker Unified Studio.
Okay, what's the benefit there? Migrations can be painful.
The key thing is it's designed to preserve your existing stuff. Your domains, user profiles, spaces, access controls. You don't have to rebuild all that infrastructure from scratch. Should make the transition, much less disruptive. They even released an open source tool to help with it.
That's smart. Less friction is always good. And this ties into Data Zone somehow.
It does, yeah. There's a related update allowing Amazon Data Zone domains to be upgraded and then accessed directly from within the new SageMaker environment.
Ah, okay. So connecting the dots.
Exactly. It's about bridging that gap between your data governance efforts in Data Zone, managing curated data sets, business glossaries, all that, and actually using those trusted assets directly in your ML development work inside SageMaker.
Nice integration. Okay, so powerful compute, smoother SageMaker experience. What about conversational AI and data integration tools.
So Amazon Lex, that's the service for building chatbots and voice interfaces. It's expanded its custom vocabulary feature.
More languages.
Yep. Several more, including Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, Catalan, French, German, and Spanish. This is really important for accuracy, right? Recognizing specific jargon, product names, proper nouns in those languages.
Absolutely crucial for real-world applications.
Yeah.
And deploying Lex. CloudFormation improvements there, too.
Yes. CloudFormation support for Lex is now available in AWS GovCloud US West. Good for government users needing IAC.
Okay.
And maybe more broadly useful, CloudFormation can now manage some of the more advanced Lex features like composite slots and queue intent across all the Lex regions.
Composite slots, remind me.
They let the bot collect multiple pieces of information in a single turn from the user. Makes the conversation flow much more naturally instead of asking 5 separate questions.
Right. And queue intent is for answering questions from a knowledge base.
Exactly. So now you can automate deploying those more sophisticated bot configurations using CloudFormation.
Got it. Okay, moving over to entity resolution, matching data records.
AWS Entity Resolution rolled out near real-time rule-based matching. This is a big deal for anything latency sensitive.
How near real time are we talking?
Seconds, apparently.
Okay.
So a new record comes in, and it can be matched against existing ones almost instantly. Think identifying a VIP caller the moment they connect to a contact center.
Or spotting potential fraud fast.
Right. Or linking patient records quickly in healthcare, obviously, with all the right consents and privacy controls in place.
Yeah, critical use cases. And one quick one in a specialized area, genomics.
Yeah, just a small efficiency thing for AWS HealthOmics. It can now automatically detect parameters in WDL workflows, that's workflow description language. Basically simplifies setting up those complex genomics analysis pipelines. Saves some manual config.
Okay, good roundup for AI and dev productivity. Let's switch gears. Theme 2, core compute performance, efficiency, and everyone's favorite topic, cost optimization.
Always crucial areas. And yeah, a mix of new hardware and some really important cost and network updates here. We already mentioned the P6B200s for SageMaker.
Right.
But there's more on the instance front.
Like Graviton spreading its wings.
Exactly. Amazon EC2 M7G instances, powered by Graviton 3, are now available in AWS GovCloud US West.
And the benefit of Graviton 3 again.
Up to 25% better compute performance versus Graviton 2, and maybe even more compelling for some, up to 60% less energy use. Plus, they're built on the Nitro system, of course.
Better performance, lower energy.
Yeah.
Good combo. And other instance types are popping up in new regions, too.
Yeah, quite a few regional expansions this week. The compute-optimized C7A instances, those use the 4th-gen AMD EPYC chips, giving up to 50% higher perf than C6A. They're now live in Europe, specifically London.
Oh, yeah?
Then the storage-optimized i4i instances, the ones with the super-fast local NVMe storage using Nitro SSDs.
And that torn write prevention feature.
That's the one. Crucial for database integrity. Those are now available in Europe, in Spain this time. Really good for I/O-heavy databases.
Makes sense.
And finally, for the really big in-memory workloads, like SAP HANA, the U7i6TB instances, the ones with a massive 6 terabytes of DDR5 RAM, they've landed in Europe, too, in Frankfurt.
So bringing the latest and greatest instance types closer to users in those key regions.
Pretty much. More choice, better performance options geographically.
Okay, beyond just new instance types, some really significant news on EC2 costs and networking, right? Especially around GPUs.
Yes, this could save people serious money. First off, savings plans are now available for those new P6B200 instances we talked about.
Okay, predictable spend covered.
But the bigger news might be the price reductions on existing powerful GPU instances. We're seeing cuts of up to 45% on P5 instances.
45%.
Yeah, up to 26% on P5N and up to 33% on the P4 and P4 instances. And that's for both on-demand and savings plans.
Those are major reductions for some of the most expensive instance types out there. That'll make a difference.
It absolutely will for anyone doing large-scale AI training or HPC. And to help make use of those lower prices, AWS also mentioned they're increasing the at-scale on-demand capacity for those P4D, P5, and P5N instances in the certain regions. So hopefully easier to get them when you need them.
Cheaper and more available. Good news all around. What about network performance? ENA Express.
Huge expansion there. ENA Express support just got added to 120 additional EC2 instance types.
Wow, 120. Across which families?
Pretty much everything. Network optimized, storage optimized, high memory, accelerated compute, general purpose, memory optimized. It's a broad rollout. And it's also now available in the AWS GovCloud US regions as well.
Okay, remind us quickly, what's the benefit of ENA Express again?
It uses a custom AWS protocol called SRD Scalable Reliable Datagram under the hood. It works transparently with your normal TCP and UDP traffic between instances. And the result is you get higher single flow bandwidth and, importantly, lower tail latency. That slight delay that can sometimes impact performance. ENA Express helps reduce that. It's especially good for things like distributed file systems, databases, media encoding, latency-sensitive stuff.
And it costs?
Nothing extra. It's just a feature of the Nitro networking stack on supported instances. Basically, a free performance boost for a massive range of instance types now.
Can't argue with free performance. And there was a small but very practical update related to AMIs and snapshots, tackling a hidden cost.
Yeah, this one's simple but useful. EC2 now has an option to automatically delete the underlying EBS snapshots when you deregister an AMI.
Ah, the orphan snapshot problem.
Exactly. It's surprisingly easy to end up paying for snapshots attached to AMIs you don't use anymore. This just automates the cleanup, helps keep those storage costs down without manual effort.
Nice little win.
Okay.
Moving to the dedicated cost tools. Building on Q's recommendations, updates for database costs specifically.
Right. Cost Optimization Hub now specifically includes recommendations for Amazon Aurora databases.
What kind of recommendations?
Things like suggesting better instance types, optimizing cluster storage, and maybe most usefully, identifying idle database instances or clusters that you might be paying for unnecessarily.
And you see these alongside other recommendations.
Yep. All consolidated in that central dashboard across your accounts and regions with estimated savings calculated based on your specific discounts and usage. Makes it easier to track database-specific savings.
And Compute Optimizer is also getting more granular with Aurora.
It is. AWS Compute Optimizer now gives recommendations specifically for Aurora I/O optimized configurations.
How does that work?
It looks at your actual storage and I/O usage patterns, uses up to 93 days of metrics if you have enhanced monitoring enabled, and helps you figure out if switching to the I/O optimized pricing model would actually save you money based on your specific workload profile.
So more tailored advice for that specific Aurora feature.
Exactly, bringing that granularity into the main optimization tools.
And one for the finance teams dealing with billing automation.
Yeah, the AWS Invoice Summary API is now generally available. This lets you programmatically fetch invoice details amounts, purchase order numbers, other metadata using the SDK. Super useful for integrating AWS billing data directly into your accounts payable systems or financial reporting tools.
Okay, good stuff on compute and cost. Let's pivot again. Theme 3, storage, databases, and analytics operations.
Right. Starting with some regional availability updates for core storage services, AWS Backup is now available in the Asia-Pacific region, specifically Taipei.
Okay, more data protection options there.
And complementing that, Amazon EFS, the serverless elastic file storage, is also now available in Taipei.
Got it. File storage and backup landing together in Taipei. What about higher performance file systems, FSx?
Yes, the second generation of Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP file systems just launched in 2 more Asia-Pacific regions, Mumbai and Tokyo.
And second-gen ONTAP gives you
Significantly more scale. Up to 12 high availability pairs, much higher throughput up to 72 gigabytes per second, and you can provision up to a petabyte of SSD storage per file system. Serious enterprise file storage performance now in those regions.
Okay, back to AWS Backup for a moment.
Yeah.
New monitoring capabilities.
Yeah, you can now get Amazon SNS notifications or Amazon Event Bridge events specifically about the status of your backup indexes.
Backup indexes, why are those important to monitor?
They're what backup uses under the covers to let you search backup metadata and, crucially, perform file-level restores from volume backups, like from EBS snapshots. So knowing if index creation succeeded or failed is pretty important for ensuring you can actually do those granular restores if you need to.
Ah, okay. Good point. Makes sense to monitor those. All right, database engines, RDS updates.
Yep, new minor versions are out. For Amazon RDS for MariaDB, it now supports community versions 10.1.1.3 and 11.4.7.
Standard advice applies. Upgrade for fixes.
Pretty much. Keep up with minor versions for security patches and bug fixes. You can use the automatic minor version upgrade feature, or for more control, blue-green deployments to manage the updates.
And PostgreSQL on RDS.
Yeah.
Something about extended support.
Yes, this is potentially a big deal for some users. Amazon RDS is introducing extended support for specific minor versions of PostgreSQL 11 and 12, specifically 11.22 Hz, 0.20250.508, and 12.22 Hz, 0.20250.508.
What does extended support give you?
It provides security patches and critical bug fixes for up to 3 years beyond when the community stops supporting those major versions. So if you're running PostgreSQL 11 or 12 and can't upgrade to a newer major version immediately, this gives you a much longer runway with continued security updates from AWS.
That buys valuable time for planning major version upgrades. Same update methods apply.
Yep, auto upgrades and blue-green deployments are options there too.
Okay, and an operational improvement for Redshift.
Right. Amazon Redshift now supports higher concurrency for vacuum operations, specifically when vacuuming different tables simultaneously.
So multiple vacuum jobs can run in parallel.
As long as they're on different tables, yes. This applies to both the automatic background vacuum processes and manual vacuum commands. The benefit is shorter maintenance windows and better overall resource utilization on your cluster during cleanup.
Makes sense. Okay, let's look at analytics and data processing tools. OpenSearch got an interesting new ingestion source.
It did. Amazon OpenSearch ingestion can now pull data directly from Atlassian Jira and Confluence.
Use case.
The main one they highlight is building a unified searchable knowledge base, maybe for feeding a retrieval, augmented generation, or RE application. You can pull in tickets, documentation, knowledge base articles, keep it continuously synced, and apply filters. Pretty handy for consolidating internal knowledge.
Yeah, I can see that being useful. And OpenSearch Serverless is expanding its footprint.
It is. The serverless option, which takes away the headache of managing the underlying cluster infrastructure, is now available in 2 more Asia-Pacific regions, Hyderabad and Osaka.
More serverless search options globally. Now, Athena, something about managing query results.
Yes, Amazon Athena rolled out a new feature called Managed Query Results.
What does that do?
Essentially, Athena automatically handles storing, encrypting, and managing the lifecycle of all those temporary query result files it writes to S3 when you run a query.
Ah, instead of me having to manage that S3 bucket and lifecycle rules myself.
Exactly. It simplifies things, reduces the chance of forgetting to clean up old results, and potentially saves on S3 costs. It's an option you can choose now, alongside the traditional method of specifying your own S3 bucket.
Nice quality of life improvement. Stream processing with managed Flink. Networking update.
Amazon Managed Service for Apache Flink now supports dual-stack endpoints, so can handle both IPv4 and IPv6 traffic, which helps organizations moving towards IPv6 adoption.
Good for future-proofing. And finally, for this section, Workflow Orchestration, MWAA.
Amazon MWAA, which is the managed service for Apache Airflow, is now available in a new region, Asia-Pacific, specifically Malaysia.
Okay, great. That covers a lot on the data side. Let's move into our 4th theme, networking, security, and general management updates.
All right. Starting with networking, AWS Wave got a new matching capability.
Wave can now match incoming web requests based on their originating autonomous system number, or ASN.
Right. So you can filter traffic based on the actual network provider it's coming from.
What's that useful for?
Could be for mitigating attacks coming from specific networks, enforcing compliance policies based on network origin, or maybe even optimizing routing or content delivery. You can add ASN conditions to your existing WAF rules, including rate-based rules, and the matching capability itself doesn't cost extra.
More granular control at the edge. Okay. What about visibility into the network firewall?
AWS Network Firewall launched a new monitoring dashboard.
What does it show you?
Gives you insights into traffic patterns like your top traffic flows by source of destination, the SNI or HTTP host names being requested. It also highlights things like unusually long-lived TCP connections or failed TLS handshakes, which can be useful for troubleshooting connectivity or security issues.
Requires logs to be enabled, I assume.
Yes, you need to have flow logs and alert logs enabled for the firewall for the dashboard to populate, but it provides a much nicer visual overview than just digging through raw logs.
Got it. And enhanced monitoring for VPC route server too, helping with BGP.
Exactly. Amazon VPC Route Server is getting better logging with new network metrics, specifically for the state of your BGP peering sessions, and BFD, which is bidirectional forwarding detection.
So knowing if your routing adjacencies are up or down.
Precisely. You can get these metrics in real time or historically via CloudWatch S3 or Data Firehose. Helps you be more proactive about monitoring your hybrid connectivity and troubleshooting routing problems when they pop up.
Useful for complex network setups. Now, Site-to-Site VPN got a few security and usability bumps.
Yeah, 3 nice updates here. First, you can now integrate AWS Site-to-Site VPN with AWS Secrets Manager to store your pre-shared keys, or PSKs.
So the PSK isn't exposed directly in the VPN configure API calls.
Right. The API responses will show the Secrets Manager ARN instead of the key itself. Better security practice.
Okay, second.
There's a new API called Get Active VPN Tunnel Status. This lets you easily check the currently negotiated security parameters for an active tunnel, like the specific IKE version, Diffie-Hellman group, encryption, and integrity algorithms being used without having to dig through device logs.
Handy for verification.
Yeah.
And third,
the Get VPN Connection Device Sample Configuration API, which gives you config examples for your router, now has a recommended parameter. If you use that, it will generate a configuration snippet that incorporates current security best practices. Helps you set up your N more securely.
so better key management, easier status checking, and help with secure config. Solid improvements for VPN.
Agreed.
All right, shifting to security and identity. AWS KMS Key Management Update for BOA. Bring your own key.
Yes. KMS now supports on-demand rotation for symmetric encryption keys where you've imported your own key material, the BYOK scenario.
What does that mean, on-demand rotation for BOA?
It means you can now trigger the rotation of the underlying cryptographic material for that key whenever you need to, either immediately or on a schedule you define. Previously, rotation wasn't straightforward for imported keys.
And this doesn't break things?
Nope. It rotates the material without changing the key's ARN or alias, so your applications don't need to change. It offers zero downtime and ensures backward compatibility, meaning the key can still decrypt data encrypted with previous versions of the key material. Very important for compliance and key lifecycle best practices.
That's a big improvement for BYOK users. Yeah. Okay, AWS Private Certificate Authority. Couple updates there focused on integrations.
Yeah, making it easier to use Private CA in common environments. First, the Private CA connector for Kubernetes, specifically the EKS add-on, is now generally available.
What does that simplify?
It makes it much easier to automatically issue and manage TLS certificates from your Private CA for services running inside your EKS clusters. Think securing ingress controllers or enabling pod-to-pod MTLS. It integrates nicely with Cert Manager, which is a popular tool in the Kubernetes ecosystem for certificate management.
Streamlined certificate handling in EKS. And the second Private CA update, Active Directory.
Right. The Private CA connector for Active Directory now supports Microsoft AD child domains.
Meaning?
If you have a more complex AD forest structure with a parent domain and multiple child domains, the connector can now interact correctly with those child domains. This allows you to have a consistent certificate issuance process across your entire AD hierarchy, using things like AD auto-enrollment, even targeting specific child domains independently.
Good for large, complex enterprise AD setups. And a security preview for AWS Wickr, the secure collaboration tool.
Yeah, they're previewing a new feature for file sharing. Network admins can configure a view-only mode within Wickr security groups.
View only for files.
Exactly. It restricts users in that group from downloading certain sensitive files shared in Wickr conversations or rooms. Adds a layer of data leakage prevention.
Interesting control. Okay, rounding out this theme with general management and monitoring, Resource Groups got some networking love.
It did. AWS Resource Groups APIs now support IPv6. So you can use IPv6 addresses when defining or querying your resource groups.
Okay.
And maybe more significantly, Resource Groups also added AWS PrivateLink support.
Meaning you can access the Resource Groups API from your VPC privately.
Yep, without needing traffic to go over the public internet. Enhances security and simplifies network architecture if you're heavily using Resource Groups for automation or tagging within your VPCs.
Good integration. Monitoring services, big expansion for Managed Prometheus.
Huge expansion. Amazon Managed Service for Prometheus, the fully managed Prometheus-compatible monitoring service, just launched in 7 additional AWS regions.
7. Which ones?
Africa, Cape Town, Asia-Pacific, Thailand, Asia-Pacific, Hong Kong, Asia-Pacific, Malaysia, Europe, Milan, Europe, Zurich, and Middle East, UAE, that really broadens its global availability significantly.
Wow, yeah, big jump. And CloudWatch Logs Insights got some powerful new analysis features.
2 really interesting ones. First, query results summarization. This is currently just in US East and Virginia, but it's pretty cool.
Summarization, how does that work?
You run your Logs Insights query, and then you can ask it to generate a natural language summary of the results using AI. It tries to highlight the key patterns or anomalies it finds in the log data you queried. could potentially speed up troubleshooting or analysis quite a bit by giving you a quick overview.
AI summarizing log query results.
Interesting. And the other update?
Enhancements to the query language itself, specifically OpenSearch PPL, that's pipeline processing language. They've added more powerful capabilities like join operations between log groups or subqueries within your log queries. Makes complex log analysis much more feasible directly within logs insights. More SQL-like power for logs. And CloudWatch Contributor Insights is also getting smarter.
Yeah. Contributor Insights, which is great for finding top-end contributors to logs or metrics, can now analyze logs that have been transformed or enriched.
Meaning?
If you're structuring your logs using, say, the built-in templates for things like WAF logs or VPC flow logs, or if you're using custom transformers like Grok to parse unstructured logs into fields, Contributor Insights can now create rules based on those structured fields. So you can analyze top contributors based on specific parsed data points, not just raw log lines.
Much more targeted analysis. These CloudWatch updates feel like a real push toward making log analysis faster and more powerful.
Definitely seems that way, leveraging AI and more advanced query capabilities.
Okay, we've covered a ton. Just a few other notable updates and regional points to quickly hit before we wrap things up.
Sounds good. Amazon Connect, the cloud contact center service, had a couple of useful updates. It now tracks hold durations specifically for agent-initiated holds during multi-party calls. There's a new field on the contact record showing how long an agent put someone on hold. Good for tracking agent performance or customer experience metrics related to holds. And also, external voice transfer is the feature that lets you transfer calls and metadata securely between Connect and other voice systems without going over the public phone network that's now available in 5 more regions: Sydney, Tokyo, Canada Central, Frankfurt, and London.
Expanding secure telephony integration. Okay. What about finding and buying software on AWS Marketplace?
AWS Marketplace now supports a localized experience in 4 additional languages: French, Spanish, Korean, and Japanese.
So the website and console are translated.
Exactly. Makes it easier for customers in those regions to discover, evaluate, and buy software or services. And AWS is providing auto-translation support to help sellers make their listings available in those languages too. Easier global procurement.
Makes sense. And just to quickly recap all the regional expansions we mentioned throughout this deep dive.
Right, let's see. Taipei got AWS Backup and Amazon EFS. OpenSearch Serverless landed in Hyderabad and Osaka. Malaysia picked up Amazon MWAA and also managed Prometheus.
And Prometheus went much wider.
Yeah, Prometheus also hit Cape Town, Thailand, Hong Kong, Milan, Zurich, and the UAE. GovCloud US West got the M7G instances, Lex CloudFormation support, and expanded ENA Express.
And several European regions got new instance types.
Right, C7A in London, I4I in Spain, U7I in Frankfurt. And those Connect external transfers expanded to Sydney, Tokyo, Canada, Frankfurt, and London.
Wow. It really drives home how AWS is constantly broadening both the service capabilities and their geographic reach.
Absolutely. It's a two-pronged expansion, always moving.
So that really covers it for this week. As you can tell, even a regular week brings a huge volume and variety of updates from AWS. Our goal here was to, cut through that density and really highlight this stuff that has practical impact for you, whether you're focused on AI, compute, storage, data, networking, security, or just day-to-day operations.
Yeah, hopefully this briefing gives you a good starting point, helps you maybe prioritize which announcements to dig into deeper based on what you're actually working on.
Definitely. And, as we were going through this, especially thinking about the Amazon Q updates its growing agentic capabilities, and those CloudWatch logs insights, features like summarization, it really points to a trend, doesn't it?
What's that?
AI isn't just something you build with on AWS anymore. It's increasingly being baked into the tools you use to operate and optimize the cloud itself.
That's a really interesting point. AI embedded within the operational layer, not just the application layer.
Exactly. So maybe a final thought for you to ponder. What does this deeper integration of AI into the very tools we use mean for the future role of cloud engineers, developers, operators? How might it change how you work, how you troubleshoot, how you interact with AWS in the near future?
Yeah, definitely something to think about. How does our job change when the tools themselves become more intelligent?
Food for thought. All right, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with the next round of essential updates.